Hey everybody, Frank Finance here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to talk about Energy Transfer, ticker symbol ET. In today's stock analysis, I'm going to share my price target. We're going to look at Q4 results and highlights. I'm going to look at the fundamentals and financials. I'm going to look at the dividend information, and I'm going to give my final thoughts on Energy Transfer as an investment. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Also hit that like button. Now back to your content. Now my price target for Energy Transfer is $12 to $14 in the next 12 months. That indicates an 18 to 38% upside on Energy Transfer. All right, so for Q4 of 2021, earnings per share came in at 29 cents, in line with analyst estimates. And on the revenue side, they beat by $2.06 billion, reporting $18.68 billion in revenue. A really good beat there on the revenue side. However, it didn't translate to bottom line, so that's one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit later as we go into the financial part of this stock analysis. Next, let's talk about some of the highlights from earnings. So pulling this from the press release, we had guidance of adjusted EBITDA for 2022 in the range of $11 to $2.2 billion. For Q4, their net income came in at $921 million. I'll talk about why this is important later on in the financial sections, but this is a good thing. CapEx growth, 1.6 to 1.9 billion. CapEx maintenance, 615 to 665 million. Now, they have a goal to get the dividend back to their pre-COVID level. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the dividend section. Their debt was reduced by 400 million. This is a significant decrease in their debt reduction rate. And I predicted that maybe it was a few months ago, or maybe it was a month ago. I can't remember exactly how much, but it was when they came out and released the dividend. They announced that they were going to be increasing the dividend. That's when I made that video. Next up, merger with Enable completed in December. They said there's $100 million in cost efficiencies associated with that. And they purchased 20 million common units after their merger was announced. And one of the projects that's wrapping up near completion is their Mariner East project. All right, so next up, I want to talk about some of the highlights on the financials and fundamental side. So when we look at our revenue, we knew that was $18.6 billion. So good job, Energy Transfer, getting more revenue. But the one thing that I'm seeing a little bit of a concern with in the previous quarters, but we saw a good sign at that improving this quarter, was an increase in net income to around 921. Now, my goal for them is to get back their net income to 850, roughly around that number on average in the quarter, so we can get kind of back to where we were in 2019, where the share price was trading around $12 to $14 a share. Now, the main reason when I dug a little bit into this was it seemed like the cost of revenue had been increasing even by a few percentage points is going to cause an issue. The biggest thing I found on the income statement that was leading to these lower net incomes. So excluding March of 2021, you can see that in the previous 4 quarters, they had around $600 million in net income. And prior to the pandemic, they were averaging a little less than 80% cost of revenue. Means cost of revenue as a percentage versus their total revenue. And in the last few quarters, you can see that's gone up into the 80s. It's been that way. And even in Q4, this previous quarter that was just released, I did the calculation somewhere between 83 and 84%. And so even with that increased revenue, they had an increased cost of from a percentage perspective. Why can't we keep that cost of revenue the same? It seems like that's being passed through somehow, and that I would have expected a net income higher than what it was. So even back here when we're generating $14 million in revenue, comparing that back to 2019 where they were averaging somewhere around, let's say low to mid $13.5 billion in revenue, they're not translating that down to the bottom line at the same rate. So that's something I want to see Energy Transfer get better at over the next few quarters. It is good that we saw them get 921 million in net income in this last quarter, so I see that as a huge positive sign. I was getting a little concerned about these last few quarter numbers, and I'm hoping over the course of the next year in 2022 we can see that cost of revenue start to go down. over time. Moving on into dividend information, currently the dividend yield is around 6.8% with an annual dividend of 70 cents and a quarterly dividend of around 17.5 cents a share. Now, Energy Transfer announced back in January that they'd be increasing the dividend by 15% to where it's at right now at 17 cents. But the key thing that they did on their earnings call was they said that they would be getting the dividend back to where it was pre-pandemic. So around that 30.5 cents range, so $1.22 annually. They didn't really give guidance as to how fast they would move that up. They still have quite a ways to get there. I mean, they have another 13 cents to go. So if they did that, over the course of a year, that would be quite a large increase on a quarter-over-quarter basis. So I don't know if they're going to do it that rapidly, but it is good, and it is basically confirming that they are comfortable with the debt load that they've currently been able to buy back over the last year in 2021, and they're starting to take priority back to the dividend. All right, now my final thoughts. With my price target of $12 to $14 a share, I think that Energy Transfer looks very good compared to what they've been doing over the last several quarters. If we look at how they produced in Q4, we saw this big surprise in revenue. We also saw a big jump in their net income compared to some previous quarters, which was my primary area of concern as it hadn't yet recovered back to 2019 levels, and that was something I was going to be a little bit worried about. Now, something I think they can improve upon is those margins up at the top level. So bringing their cost of revenue down is something that I would like to see them move to in the future. And that's something I'll want to pay attention to. Now, on the dividend side, and with them saying that they want to get their dividend back to where it was pre-pandemic, I think this is going to create a lot of excitement. Now, for me personally, again, I'm looking for capital appreciation on the stock price. And for those who are looking for a strong dividend here, again, I can't say this dividend is very secure based on how they reacted in the pandemic by cutting it in half. But moving forward at these prices, I think you can feel relatively secure that the dividend isn't going to go down from here. They're able to pay off a considerable amount of debt over 2021, and it looks like they're going back to reprioritizing the dividend. However, once they cut it one time, you can't trust them to not cut it in the future. So just keep that in mind. And again, the dividend is going to be relatively attractive if they do get it back to 2021 levels, pre-pandemic levels, because then it's going to be above 10%. So it's going to be relatively high, at least in my opinion, from a dividend perspective. So it is good, but for me personally, I'm looking for that capital appreciation, and I'm hoping that dividend is a little bit of bait for some dividend investors to come in and try to get some of that juicy dividend yield. I guess I should say future juicy dividend yield. So with all that being said, I think Energy Transfer is on track to get to that $12 to $14 price target. Again, Energy Transfer specific is not super reliant on energy prices. It's not like if the price of a barrel goes up to $100 that they're going to be significant beneficiaries of, but they will continue to see volume. So as long as we continue to see volume running through Energy Transfer's pipelines, that's what we want to see. It's not necessarily prices. If we had shutdowns, that is something you're going to want to pay attention to. If you like this type of stock analysis, please consider subscribing. I do videos on personal finance, investing, and stock analysis like this one on other stocks. Also hit that like button, it helps me out in the future. And again, I do videos on Energy Transfer quite frequently, at least on a quarterly basis. So if you like Energy Transfer specifically, more will be coming. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Frank Finance, out.